Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. This is Kelsey here today with Devin Goletz. He's the solo founder and CEO at Tailwind. Devin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelsey. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Devin, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned I'm a solo founder of a health and wellness startup called Tailwind. I'm a higher education professional as well. So I've worked for over 7.5 years in a bunch of different student-facing roles at the university setting. And I'm also a Toronto native, big fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs and former junior hockey player.
Great, awesome, go Leafs. So talk to me a little bit more about Tailwind.
For sure. It's a student wellness organization. And like most startups, it's had a lot of different iterations throughout. So the original idea actually happened during the peak of COVID lockdowns in Toronto. I don't know if you know this, but Toronto was like the most locked down city in North America. It was really terrible in 2020. And I had an idea to scale out the basics of guidance counseling in high school and put that online and make it on demand and ubiquitous for everyone. And that was the original idea for Tailwind, and that idea of providing students with wind in their sails and providing them with tailwinds, because they often get focused on the struggles and headwinds right in front of them when they're looking to go to college or university. So that was the original idea. Throughout many iterations and feedback loops, we honed in more on what we call the mental health guide to first year. That was a program that we doubled down on and improved on, and it's essentially an online self-directed resource for students who are going to college or university for the first time and want to be proactive about their wellness. And so we license that to different colleges and universities and high schools to help either launch their students or onboard them into first year so that they can have a better chance of being healthy and successful in post-secondary.
That's fantastic. So is this something that you have to do through university, or is it something that you can subscribe to outside of that?
You can subscribe to it outside of it. So if you're a graduating high school student or you're early in the journey of university or college, or you're a parent, you're a stakeholder in that student journey, you can go to our website, which is teamtailwind.ca. And you can get access to that program as well as a sister program that we created with Wealthsimple on how to finance post-secondary.
Okay.
But we really have focused mainly on B2B partnerships with various high schools, colleges, and universities, and even organizations like the YMCA, because we're always thinking about that end user, the student, and trying to mitigate any type of costs for them. So there's a lot more that we can do as well beyond just a singular program when we do partner with a school.
Yeah. So there's a big push and an emphasis on mental health, specifically through COVID, post-COVID times. Talk to me a little bit about how Tailwind stands out.
For sure. I think the biggest thing that makes us stand out is, well, first of all, the intersection that we live at is wellness, but in the context of being a student in 2022. And so we don't talk in general terms about what is anxiety or what is stress. We really focus on what are the things that students find challenging today and what are maybe some of the root causes that cause some of those struggles that affect the mental performance and wellness of students. So that's what really makes us stand out, is that intersection that we live at. But beyond that, everything that we do always starts with something that we just call a needs assessment. It can be a survey of a school or student population where we dive a lot deeper into the nuances of the circumstances that students may be in, not just check boxes in terms of, are you feeling anxious or stressed out, but how do you want to receive care? What are your preferences for how you want to be communicated with from your school? Why did you choose your school? And some demographic questions as well, so that we can really understand the specifics about different students and where they're at in their student journey. And so while we have this one program that we developed this year, which is this health and wellness orientation program that we license to different schools, what makes us different is we're really focused on a deep understanding of each community that we're serving first before kind of prescribing other types of services and customizations that we build on top of that base program.
Yeah. And with this implementation, what benefits have you seen with the universities?
Well, we're just getting started, which has been really cool. So we just
Mhm.
launched with our first university this year, which
Oh,
is Algoma
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. So that was Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, which does border the United States and Michigan there. A great university called Algoma, and
Mhm.
they're really innovative in this space. And so we were really thrilled. So we're just a couple months in
Yeah.
um, to launching that with them, and we
Yeah.
have monthly meetings with their director of student wellness.
Mhm.
So it's very much a partnership, and we're really excited to see what we accomplish this year with them.
That's
We've got a couple other launches coming up with some other schools, so we'll
yeah.
have to be back on the pod next year maybe to talk a little bit more about some of the accomplishments there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you also mentioned that you're a startup advisor. Talk to me a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah, it's super cool. So when you're a startup founder and you go all in and you quit your job, it's challenging. And what makes it challenging for a lot of people is how am I going to make this work financially, especially
Mhm.
with inflation and how
Mhm.
expensive everything is right now. So one of the things that I had to do to consider making this a full-time gig for myself was I had to find other ways to finance um, without, because I don't take a salary from the Tailwind. Everything goes back into the business, into
Mhm.
hiring other people or product development. And so I was fortunate to get a part-time startup advisor role at a organization in Canada called Tech Alliance.
Mhm.
In Ontario, in the province of Ontario, we have 17 regional innovation centers, and they're all funded by the government. So it's Canada's government being able to say, we want to invest in entrepreneurs, in innovation, and that trickles down to hiring people like me who are startup
Mhm.
advisors that local innovators and entrepreneurs can book time with. And so
Yeah.
about 20 hours of the week, I do spend a lot of time speaking to other founders and
Yeah.
startups and scale ups.
Yeah, interesting. Talk to me a little bit about your university experience and, how you've been able, because I think you mentioned that you were a professor, like you had taught some classes, correct?
Not quite a professor. I don't have my PhD or anything. I've got my undergrad, but I went to a school called the University of Western Ontario.
Yeah.
That's what it was called when I went there. It's now Western University. It's in London, Ontario, a couple hours southwest of Toronto.
Hmm.
And I studied media, information, and technoculture for my undergraduate degree.
Hmm.
And as soon as I graduated, I worked for 4.5 years at the university. So the first half was in as a liaison officer. I worked in recruitment. So I was that point of contact for high school
Hmm.
students and families who were planning to join Western for their first year. And the second half of my time at Western, I was a career services officer. So I ran all things career
Okay.
development
Okay.
for one of the faculties and ran their internship program. So I used to teach career development courses, but and workshops, but
Yeah.
wasn't called a professor.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. I knew
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
You knew what I was trying to get at.
for sure.
That's great. That's great. So how have you worked to build Tailwind's name out?
A lot of different ways. I think
Hmm.
when you're a founder, like you have to be super scrappy. Like if you haven't raised capital, like at this point, Tailwind has not raised any capital. It's been completely bootstrapped. So it's a slow burn. It's a slow crescendo, which is not always what a lot of VCs want to hear.
Hmm.
And they want the line that's going straight up on the graph.
Hmm.
And so that can also be difficult to balance sometimes as a founder when you're seeing progress and validation month over
Hmm.
month. It just might not be at the rate that a VC wants, but you have to stick to what your game plan is and your vision.
Hmm.
So every month there's different ways. I mean, now we're on this podcast with you, which is really exciting. We've leveraged, so one of the regional innovation centers in Ontario called Communitech, based out of Kitchener Waterloo, which is Canada's version of Silicon Valley. It's incredible.
Hmm.
Um, their PR team helped us a lot. So when we launched with Algoma, we worked with Communitech, and
Yeah.
that launch ended up getting 53 million impressions in PR.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was like really
Holy cow.
major. And so yeah, if you put that energy out into the universe, I think you can't discount how important it is just to have like organic growth from like tell your friends, tell your family about your mission, tell the
Mhm.
people in the co-working space what you're up to, reach
Mhm.
out to old colleagues, make some LinkedIn posts. We want to get going much more on social media in the months ahead and start up our TikTok channel and everything. But all these little things do make a big difference. And then naturally, probably the most important thing is speaking to your customers and getting actual validation in the form of revenue and partnerships.
Yeah.
So you can shout from the rooftops all you want about your idea, but if you're actually working with people and have reviews and you're changing people's lives, that's really
Yeah.
what's going to be the Kickstarter for spreading the awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me a little bit about the Tailwind program. Kind of what are the inner workings of it? Like, what could one expect when they work with Tailwind?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll talk about our self-directed resource that's online. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like an online course. When it started, we called it the Mental Health Guide to First Year. And
Mm-hmm.
it was one person going through 5 or 6 modules. And this person was a therapist who had spent years of experience counseling university students at the undergraduate and graduate level. We piloted that at a few different colleges and universities in Canada, got a lot of feedback from students, created a
Mm-hmm.
student advisory board, and then we decided to completely overhaul the program.
Mm-hmm.
And now what Algoma has chosen to call it, for instance, is the Health and Wellness Orientation Program. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're a student, that's what you could expect, is that this is an online self-directed program that is like a health and wellness orientation if you're going to university or college for the first time. And
Mm-hmm.
so when a student logs in on our website, within 2 clicks, they can be in this online program
Mm-hmm.
where you are learning from various students who are in university, award-winning professors and career counselors, therapists. I appear in one of the videos as well. And so basically all the stakeholders that support the student journey, as well as the students themselves,
Mm-hmm.
um, are teaching various topics of psychoeducation
Mm-hmm.
that are in the context of being a student. So it's not so much about what is anxiety again, it's how do we manage change and what are all the changes that you're going to take as
Mm-hmm.
you're going into first year. It
Mm-hmm.
is basically 6 different modules on different topics, and all of those topics were created by involving students in the process. So that
Yeah.
came from surveys and talking to students in schools to say, what does your school actually need? So that's
Yeah.
what a student could expect. And if their
Yeah.
school was using it, the school can implement it in a different number of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And is there a website that someone could go to? Like one of our listeners is listening. How do they access you?
For sure. So it would be www.teamtailwind.ca. So that's TEAMTAILWIND.ca.
No
Because
S.
no S there.
That's
Yeah.
great. So, if you were to leave our listeners with one piece of like a little nugget of information, whether about Tailwind, kind of about mental health and wellness, what would that be?
I would say if there was one thing, well, it would depend on who the audience is. If it's other founders and startups, I would say, um, you know, stay true to your vision, but also be really ruthless and honest and rigorous with your own evaluation
Mm,
process. Like I think that's super important. I talk to a lot of really successful founders and advisors myself who are adamant that you got to run these quick experiments and um, don't ever fall in love with your solution. Keep falling in love with the problem. Keep
yeah.
thinking about that opportunity solution tree and all the work that goes
Wow.
into the top of it without getting obsessed about your
Yeah.
solution. So that's what we're doing, I would say, like from a product development and roadmap standpoint
Yeah.
is I know we're talking a lot about this one program, but there's a lot of other things that we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say to other founders, advisors, or startups, or people who want to connect in that space.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a student or a parent or a stakeholder who's listening to this, and you're thinking more about like student wellness and mental health,
Mm-hmm.
I would say maybe one thought would be really think about involving a whole team of support for you. I think it takes a village to raise a child, and
Mm-hmm.
in today's climate, with a lot going on in the world, with wars overseas and political issues in the Western world, and inflation and COVID and all these different challenges, it's really important to involve a lot of people to support you in the journey. So that's why our website is actually called Team Tailwind, is because we really wanted to provide students with a team of support to be their tailwinds.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. That's really insightful, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I don't just to circle back, you mentioned that you are doing more than just the online module. So I want to make sure that you had the ability to talk about kind of all of the things that Tailwind is doing. So talk to me more about that.
Yeah, 100%. I mentioned we, not to fall in love with your own solution and idea. And the first thing that we did, that first product and solution was the health and wellness orientation program with the different modules. And we have now sort of shifted that from Tailwind is that product to Tailwind is a student wellness organization with a
Mm-hmm.
vision and mission. And there's many ways that we work towards that. And
Mm-hmm.
this program that's used across Canada is one of those ways.
Mm-hmm.
But we've started to separate it from some of the other services that we're providing. So we formed a partnership with the School of Social Work at York University and Toronto Metropolitan University this fall, which is really exciting. So we have some social work placement students who have joined our team to do focus a lot more on research. So we call that a needs assessment. That's diving really deep into more than just a Google form in understanding the needs and challenges and priorities of different schools and communities. So that in and of itself is like a standalone service.
Mm-hmm.
We're now able to provide one-on-one counseling. And then we're at the beginning phases of planning out other products and services, whether that be master classes or cohort support for different communities. But of
Mm-hmm.
course, we have to talk to our customers and let them lead us in the way in terms of
Mm-hmm.
what those other services are that we're going to be developing over the course of the next school year.
That's fantastic. Well, Devin, this was a great conversation. I love mental health and wellness. It's very near and dear to my heart. We've talked about that before, and I love the path that you're taking, kind of like that whole school, that whole university, that whole student approach to really supporting the youth and the next generation of our students coming forward. So great conversation again. Devin Golitz, he's the sole founder and CEO at Tailwind. Devin, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great weekend.